To show a little bit of an anatomy of an attack because I'm getting more familiar with the system and beginning to feel more comfortable with what I'm doing in it and the strategies or tactics I'm using in it. I'm on the beginning of the 6th turn. The Swedes have moved forward and they've charged forward here. First of all, they grabbed a gun, which is potentially big, potentially dangerous because they're facing a couple of guns at really close range. Those could just tear them apart there. They're also launching an attack on this, which isn't at terribly good odds and might involve a charge to get 2-1. But of course, that opens the risk up greater because they will all be disordered if they do a charge. However, they probably will all be disordered anyway. 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so they probably want to do that charge. Keeping clusters together of connected units under a commander so that next turn, assuming I don't lose units that are connecting me, I'm all in command again. And working to isolate little slices of pieces. So like these guys have a 3-1 here. Here I'm going to have a 1-1, but with a chance of destroying a big, heavy infantry unit. And we'll see what the results here are. The Swedes got kind of lucky with some long-range firepower, knocking down one of these big units, which is why they're going after it. But they also gives them the advantage of not having to necessarily pay attention to it as well. However, getting it off the board would be... Well, a miscalculation on odds. I only had a 1-1 attack here when I thought I had to arranged a 2-1. Oh well. As well as Gustavus failing to rally most of the units out here that he had a very good chance of doing so. He only needed to roll a 2. Well, 2 of the units he rolled a 1 on. Is leaving the Swedes in somewhat worse shape than I think they'd be. Now I could actually launch forward with an Imperial attack. Let's see what the weather's going to be like. According to this, it says a 1 or a 2 is fog. We're good weather. A 5 is really unlikely to trigger anything anyway. It's too hard to look it up in the book each time. All right, so now the Imperials get to try to react and respond to this situation. And, well, we got some definite weak spots in the Swedish line that we can try to take. Now the blows are falling on the Swedish leaders. You can see I lost both Weimar and somebody who I don't know, who has a lot of consonants and no vowels on the counter. Yeah, no idea who that's supposed to be. All right. We can see that the Imperials have pretty much driven the Swedes away from the guns, taken them back. And over here, the advance hasn't been as impressive as I thought it might have. I thought I was going to be able to sweep in with a lot of units, but a lot of these units were pretty damaged. I'm trying to withdraw and position myself a little bit better. Some screw-ups on the Imperial sides. There was an attack that I didn't really want to make here, but it ends up being a fair exchange. Ended up knocking out a charge-capable Swedish cav in exchange for one of my units. Of course, that's okay. But the biggest is taking out a couple of those leaders, because now the Swedes are down to just 3 leaders on the board. And that's more parity. One of the big advantages the Swedes had was all these leaders that they could be a lot more mobile with. Well, now the armies are kind of tiring and exhausting. Let's see what we got here for troops, because I'm worried about the losses. 19, 30, 38, 43, 50. I think I'm supposed to hit in the 60s somewhere for the Swedes, and I have no idea what the Imperials, so I haven't really been worried about it. 65 for the Swedes, so we're getting pretty close. And it's 45 for the Imperialists, except that game turn 5, it goes up to 50. Okay. And we're actually at 23. We took a pretty hefty hit with the losses this turn. The first kind of infantry really being hit up. And it was a painful strike. So this battle is certainly not one-sided at this point. And the Swedish guns are going to have a hard time seeing. We got some shot there, but for the most part the Swedes have kind of screened their guns. We got shots up in this direction as well. Not that it's a huge factor, but you know, I got 5 guns. Chances are I'll probably get a hit every now and, you know, every turn, about. So, you know, one demoralized unit, if I can concentrate all my fire on something like this and knock that out each turn, that makes a big difference to the situation. It looks like the Swedish army's got to withdraw and try to recoup, though. They're in pretty damaged situation. I may be able to, you know, do some limited attacks, but whenever you do that, you're exposing your units then, because they're probably going to get weakened by the attack. Okay, so the Swedes push forward, continuing an attack, essentially. Some pullbacks to recover, and you can see Gustavus wasn't very successful again, even with that big +3. But we got some of the outliers here. Over here, they didn't take any penalty for their attacks, but didn't gain any traction, really. Over here, however, they managed to wipe out a couple more cav units. Not a huge factor. Would have been nice if they could have killed Pappenheim here. Again, that would reduce the Imperials down to just one commander, which is a troublesome situation. Plus, Pappenheim's valuable. And this is the battle in which he historically died, not... It wasn't earlier than this. I thought it was earlier. There was something I wanted to discuss, but damned if I remember what it was. Oh yeah, there's counters here that are definitely misprinted. So this sucker is a 2-4. On his other side, he's got a 3 strength. We had the one that's misaligned with what's on the map. There's not much I can do about it. I mean, I guess I could look up and try to find if there's some errata for this. But there's only a certain degree of repair you can do, especially where we come to the counters with their yellow print on them. Those are really hard to repair. You know, with the old SPI ones, I could just take a black marker and I could write over the number and do pretty well. I could also draw a picture of the figure, a little stick figure, and that didn't look too different from what was on the on the board. But with these, you know, they got this kind of pretty picture. It's kind of annoying to deface these counters now by doing that. The other ones, I didn't care so much, but these guys with the picture, if I lose a counter, no way I can reproduce that artwork. And more, the gold, putting a big black number on it would be kind of ugly. So, you know, if you're going to go for high quality graphics, don't fuck it up, okay? You know, don't make mistakes. And of course, that's probably way too much to ask of Decision Games. They seem to always misprint things and screw things up. In just about every game they put out, one minus against buying the reprints. Chances are you probably got the better quality control from SPI. Even with their tiny little tight production schedule, they were less likely to screw up. And if they did, you can fix it. Alright, some limited attacks by the Imperials, knocking up some of these units. Strike here to kill another infantry somewhere back here. We're up to 60 points. That means the Swedes are almost knocked out here. Some hits down here. I actually ran this guy further away from the main line because he didn't have an attack. He was too far away and out of command. Having a lot more success rallying with Wallenstein and Pappenheim than Gustavus is. Which brings us to the interesting question. Do we want to kill Gustavus? We can't just decide he's going to die. But we can be more reckless. Well, we could. We could ride him up. But we could be more reckless with him. Right now we're at the base 65 losses. We're going to get the -1 on the table because we're doing poorly here. And the question is, what matters most in terms of victory points? Elimination of Gustavus is worth 40. Whereas routing the army doesn't appear to be in here. Oh, it is. If infantry is demoralized, it becomes worth more. So I'll have to pull out if the army's routed. That's kind of the problem. The infantry becomes double value in that case because it's getting hunted down. So the question is, how heavily do I want to engage? I can't just give the guns up. That's a loss too. So I might want to fall back on a defensive position and try to artillery duel it. I don't know. There's certainly some stuff over here I could mop up. Hard call. Anyway, the weather's still good, and try to figure out what the Swedes are up to. You see a fairly strong Swedish reaction moving across here, an attack across, some recovery throughout as well. Wiped out a few more Imperial cav. We're still not hitting Imperial infantry. I mean, we got one here, but he's not dead, right? And that's kind of the problem. The Imperials seem to be able to conserve their infantry, just the way I'm playing, I guess. I gotta make a quick weather check, and we're okay. And we'll go to the Imperial side of the turn and see how they react to this. And the Imperial gunfire succeeded in wrecking another Swedish unit, probably this one, but I'm not sure. Which means that the Swedish army is demoralized. From now on, any infantry casualties count double. And I'll put them up here to indicate that so that I count them that way. You can see I was able to push forward, destroy some cav up here. I had other attacks that didn't really get me much traction. An attack on Gustavus with the thought of, you know, I can trade now, because if I destroy an infantry brigade, or if I destroy, or if I disorder an infantry brigade, it's not going to come back anymore. So at this point, the Swedes kind of have to start backpedaling. There's still some opportunities, though. For example, the supply wagon, I had to leave that open. There's the possibility of grabbing some guns and then potentially turning them against the Imperials. The problem is, if I run into this hole, there's a whole flood of Imperials that can hit me and maybe do me in if I try to slip into there. I've done that before when I was up here and it didn't work out too well. Taking the wagon, though, this is kind of exposed, and it goes away once it's captured. It just becomes this permanent piece of damage. Does it count for anything other than victory points? Again, I have to continuously look this up to see if it counts for... No, only infantry losses count. And we're in pretty good shape here, actually, at this point at 28. Right now we're up at around 50 for total damage, so for the limit for the damage. So we need another 22 hits lost infantry for this to matter. Now, if you look at the amount of cav that the Imperials have lost, that's really quite significant. But those are just victory points. Those aren't the morale effect. And that morale effect is a big issue. It means the Swedish army really can't just keep grinding on. And so the Swedes indeed swept in, made some attacks, some good ones. They hit, some of the Imperial units. If they can wreck that Imperial army, that would be great. But the problem is we've got this cannon right in front of us. There was no chance of actually wiping it out. It would still be there after an attack. And we're beginning to run out of things. You know, these infantry, this big guy, he went down, taking this one out. I feel like I have to make attacks still, but then, you know, I've just got to start peeling those units back, as Brahe's done already, pulling back to the guns. The guns were somewhat effective this turn, actually. Check for the weather. And we're okay. And now, you know, the Imperials will probably fall back and reorganize a little bit and try to make an attack somewhere. There's a big nasty here that's going to be tough for them to... That's pretty much the end of the Swedes. Gustavus has been killed down here, along with the other big unit. We see two big units. That's 21 points of strength, but 42 points towards victory. Gustavus is worth another 40. No die roll on the special table because the army's already racked. So now whatever the Swedes gained over here has pretty much been turned into something very ugly for them. We've got Wallenstein moving down, threatening those artillery. I actually had him on top of this. He can't do that, so I had to pull back and reorganize down there. But yeah, the Swedes are pretty much done for here, and this may be a significantly more impressive victory for the Imperials than what we had historically. What are they rated as historically here? Lutzen, they give it a tactical Swedish victory, actually, because the Swedes basically held the field the losses were pretty bad on both sides. But the loss of Gustavus, you know, in the game, it's hard to call it any kind of victory for the Swedes because Gustavus is worth 40 points. Losing him is going to swing that tactical victory probably to an Imperial one. But I think we're going to see a fairly hefty Imperial victory here. Well, with the extra points gotten off this, the guns that really I can't hold. And there's nowhere to go. You can't retreat off the map. I may allow it just because there's just no way the Swedish army is going to hold up here. But they may do something of a fighting withdrawal. Try to take some of this with them. The problem is the only thing they can really do is disperse cav. They can't really kill the infantry, the big infantry units. The Imperials have been good at defending them, and the Swedes have been reckless with theirs. The Swedes begin to withdraw, and in the process they took out another infantry, I think a big guy, and maybe a cav. The idea being kind of maybe if they're on the defensive they can score enough points. But on the other hand, their points are worth more. So exposed stuff like this infantry here can be a real problem in that that's going to be generating what? 12 points if it gets killed. Swedes continue their withdrawal back. These guns still kind of vulnerable. This hasn't been cleared, so I can come through, sweep through a bunch of these. But the Swedes can actually, because this is all linked unless I can break this up, get back to them and take them back. So they never really get a shot. It's a paralyzing feature of them. So defending this one close to these is kind of important because this unit at least will be stuck there. Brahe ended up taking Wallenstein out. That's kind of a little bit of a bonus. And we're up to about 41 here. So we're actually not that far from the Imperials breaking. Of course, they shoot up to, I think, 65 once this turn hits. So they're coming pretty close to being very far away once again. And Brahe's moved his way in so that he's in range from these guns. These guys can target in there. And this one here's got a clear line of sight no matter what. Let's check the weather. I better look at the rules. I think we're getting close to where it might be different. See, now here 11's a 1. That's fine there. And 12 and 13 are 1 to 2. But 14 is going to be a 1 to 3. So we're pretty close. It's just the very final turn. Probably a combination of dusk and the smoke as the late turns come. And we're okay, so the Imperials get to move without restriction. We push into turn 12. Still got a cluster. I tried to kill Brahe. Well, at least I couldn't kill him, but I tried to neutralize his forces a little bit. And that was successful in an exchange. You've got a clump of Imperials here. That doesn't do me any good because I don't have a leader, but I don't know, I kind of like keeping my troops in clumps anyway because there are some defensive advantages to having pieces next to each other in this. Over here we're sweeping in, managed to take out, what, Knutsen or something like that. Knufisen? I have no idea who he is. And his cav. Now it's kind of valuable because that's cut the leadership off of this. We're down to 1 leader with Brahe. And we're down to 1 Imperial leader with Pappenheim. Alright, let's see what the Swedes get. The initial artillery fire over here was sufficient to knock out another big Imperial unit. Now I'm like 2 strength points away from breaking the Imperials. 2 infantry strength points. If I can get that this turn, it won't help next turn. If I can get it, well before those troops come in. But if I can get it this turn, that ends the Imperial infantry recovering, which it's not going to even things up, but it does make things more interesting. And it'll also double any scores of any Imperials infantry that I start taking. So we're in kind of an interesting position. Fortunately, not one I could take any advantage of. The Swedes over here couldn't get around to the back of this unit, and if they put themselves here, they have to attack all kinds of units. I was considering if I had full movement, I could have moved this cav back there. And he would be making a 1 to 2 attack, If I had a leader, obviously I could go to 1-to-1, and that would have been cool. Over here, this guy's protected here, and here, and here. The only place he was safe to hit was back here, and again, I didn't have enough speed. Instead, I took the gun and wiped out the cav that was here. That's the best I can do. But the Imperials are going to try to protect their infantry, because next turn they get a pile more, and their route level goes up. So we'll see what they can do, but they're probably not going to press the attack too hard right now. Instead, we just worried about screening ourselves from the guns, putting things in the way, and kind of withdrawing to the side for the, and I don't know, maybe I didn't roll the fog roll, I don't remember. And on this side, though, I felt safer making an attack. This is just cav up here for the most part, and I cleared some more points off the field, essentially. The Swedes were unable to get any real grip on the Imperials here. Some artillery fire didn't open up any new opportunities, say flipping this unit or anything, which I targeted pretty heavily. But I did have the ability to slide up here. I made some other attacks, and those wiped out a couple of Imperial units kicking around down here. But this final attack is very important. This is a 1-to-2 attack, which is not terribly good, right? Nothing great can happen on the 1-to-2 table, but on a 1 or a 4, I get an exchange, which is enough to destroy this and break their morale before these guys come in. Now, these guys don't do much except increase the morale. I do not think I got it. I got an attacker damage. Oh, well. And now I'll make my rolls for recovery on the cav, I guess. That's about all I got. Just about half. Imperials are able to handle those few Swedes there. They end up mostly recovering around Pappenheim. We got the new units coming in here. They can't possibly reach. They're only allowed to move 2 each time because of the command rules. These guys have been out of reach, but they finally kind of recovered some of their strength. So, well, the Swedes have one more chance to do some damage. They only have these guys are damaged and can't get anywhere. Basically, I'll be trying to defend the guns, and maybe I'll be able to extricate them at night. A couple nice lucky shots by the Swedes took a couple of those heavy infantry out of the equation, which is going to make it a lot harder for the Imperials to do anything. But here we are at the very end, and I seem to have these guns mainly screened. I can do some really long-range sniping, so we'll start with that. This guy can probably hit that, I don't know. I'll try the other one. And then I've got these. I would rather hit infantry than cav. So I'll start plinking these off because, well, I actually have enough movement that I could get maybe my cav 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down here. So I got 3 more shots. Let's go for the end piece. It doesn't look like the Imperials are getting the kind of luck the Swedes had. Alright, well, we'll see what I can get into play. I can at least attack this piece or something. And after calculating the victory conditions, it was as much of a blowout as it seemed. First I thought, wow, 163 points for the Swedes. That sounds pretty decent. Then, well, these guys are worth 110 in and of themselves when you count in the big points for Weimar and Gustavus. That's 60 points right there. The total came out to 308 for the Imperials. They didn't capture any guns, but, well, that's what we got. And it's not too surprising when you saw what happened to the Swedes in this game. Alright, let's send this one up.